Hello everyone, we're back with another review and we're here to review
Civil War.
Yes, directed by...
I didn't know there was going to be a pop quiz.
You know it.
Ex Machina director.
Yes. But yeah, we didn't actually plan to review this film. And as usual, Yvette didn't know actually what movie we were going to watch. I just dragged her along. She doesn't watch trailers or anything. So this was a blind movie watch for you.
Yeah, and when we were arriving, I was like, wait, what movie are you bringing me to? It was like large groups of like bros, like packs of bros. And I'm like, is this going to be like a really like boy movie, like a big action flick or something, or like 007 or something? But it wasn't actually.
It kind of was.
Kind of.
And it kind of wasn't. All right, well, let's just dive in and talk about it. Yvette, why don't you give a quick little setup for those who don't know what this movie is?
So Civil War depicts a dystopian-like American future. It surrounds a team of journalists who travel across the United States to Washington, D.C. during a rapidly escalating Second American Civil War. Hence the title.
Yeah, traveling. So it's a road trip movie. It's like Little Miss Sunshine.
No, not really, but these journalists, actually, they include the renowned war photojournalist Lee Smith, played by Kirsten Dunst, her playful colleague Joel, veteran journalist Sammy, and a young aspiring journalist who tags along named Jesse.
So yeah, I think that's pretty much all they kind of need to know going in. From a glance, if you were to watch the trailer of this, you might think you're going into some kind of like White House Down type of film, but like Alex Garland tends to do, he gave it his own unique take. So Civil War feels like it started as kind of like a thought exercise, like a what if scenario that Alex Garland came up with and he kind of just wrote out. I wonder if this happened, how would this play out? And that's what we're watching. Yeah, and the end result is it's unsettling and it's kind of sickening in ways that very eerily speaks to our current political kind of polarizing times.
Yeah, it's very realistic, it feels, too, so it makes it feel even more relatable, I guess.
So there's a little bit of realism to this one, but the word I wasn't expecting to use describing this movie going in was immersive. While these photojournalist characters are caught up in the hellfire, like ducking and dodging gunfire, we kind of felt like we were in the trenches, so to speak, with them. Kind of how I felt like watching All Quiet on the Western Front. It stimulated my senses.
To me, it gave me like a feel of like being on like a amusement park ride almost.
Yeah.
You feel like the seats like trembling because the noise and the sound is so like rattling.
The sound design is really, really, really incredible, I think. I think that was the highlight of the film for me. And those wondering whether they should watch this in the theaters, I definitely would recommend going to see it in theaters because I think the sound justifies the price of the ticket. There's a real attention spent on the sound and also the haunting imagery. The film is beautifully shot by Garland's collaborator, Rob Hardy. Like many of the scenes really did have my stomach in knots. Very similar to like those battle sequences in Children of Men.
The acting specifically was very realistic. I thought it was fantastic. He gives us a really nice balanced group of characters to follow. I really enjoyed this group. I can see why it could feel like stock characters a little bit. Like you have the leader or like the stubborn one. You have like the fun, goofy one. You have like the young apprentice and then you have like the old wise one. You know, so it feels a little bit like we've seen these characters before, but in this context, I feel like it really works. Kirsten Dunst gives a really subtle performance in which the horror she's documenting in her long career as a war journalist is beginning to really weigh on her. So she has a very particular arc to play into her character.
And also Stephen McKinley Henderson. He gives a very likable, I think one of his best on-screen performances to date. Kaylee Spaney continues to impress. By the way, did you know that was Kaylee Spaney? The little girl. She's the actress in Priscilla.
I did not recognize her. Jesse Plemons was my favorite part. He has like the shortest little scene, but he really like brings it. And it's one of the most intense, terrifying kind of like on the edge of your seat scenes. And for like the 5 minutes he was there, I feel like he stole the whole movie, in my opinion.
Might be in the movie, yeah. I was really surprised and in general how invested I found myself in these characters, especially given how intentionally vague the story of Civil War can be. I mean, the story that we follow is actually, it's generally pretty straightforward. It's like a road trip, but the story in the background and how we got here, it's not entirely clear.
Yeah, and I think you have to kind of let go of that in order to enjoy the movie, because I think if you're too focused on like, wait, what side is this and who is that and what battle is this, and you're not going to be able to enjoy the movie. I think just watching it and accepting the vagueness is necessary.
Yeah. Like there's one scene, even the people fighting each other don't even know exactly why they're fighting. They're just describe it as like, well, they're shooting at us. So I think it kind of speaks to how convoluted war can be. And like in the film, I kept wanting to know, like you said, wait, who are the Democrats representing and who are the Republicans representing, and which one is Alex Garland being more favorable to? But, you know, again, Garland doesn't even use the words Democrat and Republican in this movie.
No, it's not once mentioned, and it's never clear.
Yeah. And I feel like if he were to mention it, it would kind of only turn the film into like a condemnation of a particular party that would really ultimately cause more division and more polarization coming out of this film, which I think is the opposite of what this film is really striving to do. In some ways, Civil War presents the question that is simple, but yet like bears repeating. Is this what we're seeing on screen? Is this what we want it to come to? Like our main lead, who sees kind of images of war day in and day out, she's grown completely numb.
Yeah, it's like what happens to us if we become desensitized to the brutality of war.
Yes, like sometimes it feels like the message or the motivations of the characters feel a little like muddled or unclear, but in some ways it almost feels fitting because I think the motivations of war gets muddy. Kind of like a war journalist, Alex Garland almost adopts that same principle, which is to not tell you what to think, but he just kind of records and just lets the audience ask the questions themselves. And I have seen some interpret like the apolitical stance he takes as something that's too safe and calculated, but personally, I thought it was the right way to go. I personally was exhilarated by the vision Garland created here, but I was also deeply disturbed. So I'm going to give Civil War, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I think some of the scenes are definitely worth that rating, but as we'll probably talk about later during the spoilers, some scenes for me kind of take that down a notch. So I would give it a 7 out of 10.
All right, well, let's talk about that a little bit. We're going to get into the film a little bit more, so we're going to have a spoilers talk on the entire film. So if you haven't seen the film, now's the time to stop watching. This is an official spoiler alert. So let's go ahead and talk through the movie a little bit.
Okay, so from the beginning?
Yeah, just go from the beginning. Let's go through the movie, and then we'll talk about the movie. Maybe that would be the best way of doing this.
Okay. So in the beginning, it opens up with like the president, which in my opinion, the president did not resemble or sound like any president we've ever had. In this world that he created, he did create like a 4-party war. That's like, I think a good place, I think, to start is just so that you know it's not a 2-sided war, it's a 4-sided war.
Yes. So yeah, actually online there's a map. They've made a map so you know which side is fighting which. So we have the first one is the Western Front.
Was it the Western Forces?
What'd I say?
Front.
Oh, I'm sorry. First one is the Western Forces combining the Republic of California and the Second Republic of Texas. Somehow they're in cahoots with each other. They actually ultimately win in the end, spoiler alert. Then you have the Florida Alliance. This seemed to have succeeded from the US, and I think they eventually allied with the Western forces to fight the Loyalists. And the Loyalist states, I think that's the party that Nick Offerman, the president, is a part of, as well as Jesse Plemons. And then you have the New People's Army, which I really don't know what their platform is. Perhaps they're like constitutionalists or a little bit more moderate, so they're maybe like staying out of the war altogether. So yeah, the film really doesn't explain a lot of this at all, even in that first opening moments.
Yeah, and like I said, you do have to kind of let go of that in order to enjoy the movie. But next, what happens is that Kirsten Dunst is like photographing an Antifa protest, and it's pretty, like, I don't want to say vicious, but it's pretty violent.
Yeah, that's where she meets the young journalist.
She's already kind of like helping this kid like right off the bat. Then we meet the rest of the bunch, the rest of the group, and they are talking about how they're going to go to interview the president. Well, her and Joel are going to go interview the president.
In Washington, D.C.
Yes. Apparently he's like squatting in the White House.
Right.
So they're going to go and interview him. And it's like just a wild, long journey with a lot of obstacles. Right. Somehow the young journalist tricks her way into joining them.
And Kirsten Dunst doesn't want her to go, but reluctantly agrees.
And yeah, and that relationship already for me was a little shaky just because Kirsten Dunst comes off as like a very ruthless, tough as nails, kind of like you said, numb to all of this character. And the fact that she already has this soft spot for this kind of young, kind of reckless girl is to me a little bit unbelievable. But as the journey...
So you don't buy that she sees herself in her.
Yeah, and I get that it's like she sees it as her younger self. And there's a lot of stuff that happens later in the movie, which I'm sure we'll get to,
Okay.
that is even less believable to me. But I just feel like I don't know if it was fully in her character to care so much.
Okay.
After being in such a brutal environment for so long and being desensitized to all of this for so long. But maybe we're just watching the pinnacle of her transformation.
So then the road trip starts, and our first stop on the trip, choo-choo. In the first stop, we gotta get some gas. They go to a gas station. They meet two shady fellas, and they have two other gentlemen strung up. So it's a very chilling scene right there, because right out of the bat, the little girl's very shaken by this, because she sees two men that are basically almost near death. That's like our first like little introduction to Kirsten Dunst's like kind of
like
detachment to taking photos and just reporting the facts and not getting too emotionally involved.
We also remember after the movie, you asked me about this. You said, remember that Nat Geo interview you told me about when I had told you about how the National Geographic photographers, they don't intervene when like, let's say a killer whale is like attacking a seal or eating a baby seal or something, because they just let like the nature of the situation play out.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same of how Kirsten Dunst talks about what she does in this movie. So then I think that what ends up happening, I don't know the specific order, but they end up spending the night. And this is like one of those scenes that I kind of found kind of like cheesy. I was like still debating whether I liked the movie or not at this point. They spend the night in like their cars and like outside or whatever. And Joel, the like goofy character, he wants to go to this like battle that's nearby the next day.
Again, no context of what this battle is or who's fighting who. We know, we're able to observe that they're kind of militia men fighting people in the military.
Yeah, and the only way you know that is that one side is wearing army clothing and then the other side is wearing civilian clothing. But they all have like very heavy machinery. Like,
right. And just to kind of add on to that too, we assume that the people who are in the building are potentially the bad guys because I think they're the loyalist team. But no one comes across as a good person because there's straight up executions and all that stuff. So it's just ugly war. And then we have a few other random detours. There's one involving sniper fire between two people. It's kind of funny. And then it leads into when they run into the other journalist, right?
Yes. And so they see a car. They think they're being followed, but it ends up being their other journalist friend who's just like wild and funny. And they're like speeding down the road. And they do this like adrenaline junkie thing. I guess they're all kind of adrenaline junkies. They hop from one car to the other while they're going like full speed, freeway speed. And the little girl ends up doing it too. She ends up going. And so then she ends up leaving and the car takes off and they finally catch up to the car and the car's like abandoned on the side of the road. So they're like, oh, something's off. And when they go find out, that's when they realize that they're being kind of held captive, I guess, by Jesse Plemons.
Right.
He's like a goofy looking character. He has like these goofy red glasses on, but like he's pretty intense and intimidating.
Yeah.
In his like wild cardness that he brings to the character.
He interrogates all the journalists, basically asking them where they're from. So he kills two of the journalists. Yes.
And it comes off, I would say, borderline racist, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's supposed to be.
Okay.
So it's this intense showdown, and Stephen McKinley Henderson comes out of nowhere, smashing into him with a car. It's a pretty exciting moment.
I love that scene just because, well, first of all, he has the best instincts out of the bunch, which makes sense because he's the wise one. But he didn't want to go up to Jesse Plemons. He was like, no, like, we're going to get killed, basically. Yeah. So he stays behind. They're like, yeah, fine, stay behind, old man. You can't outrun them anyways. And then he ends up saving them, all of them. And it was like, we were cheering.
I was cheering. I was so happy. Thank God. Because Jesse Plemons just has that ability to play characters that you want to run over with a car. But yeah, the old man, unfortunately, does get shot in the encounter because they shoot after him. So he gets wounded. And he actually dies. That's when we see, I would say, the first real change in Dunst's character, because when she was looking at the photos, she took a photo of his body dead, but looking at it, she decides to delete the photo.
Yeah, which kind of contradicts the conversation she had earlier with the younger journalist about how you know, she's very detached and unbiased in how she would even take her photo if she died.
And I think this is a very important moment. I feel like it's saying something about the ethics of photojournalism. Maybe she wanted that character to die with some dignity and not become just an image of
Another
war.
story, yeah.
Another story, like he's more than just the story. You know, he's not turning him into a martyr or some victim of war. It's just his friend, and she didn't want to see her friend published in that way. You know, kind of how you don't want to see someone in a coffin with a bloody face. You know, when you bury your friend, you want to make them look presentable and decent. And I think there's a little bit of that with Kirsten Dunst there. And she said she wouldn't delete a photo in this situation. And I was kind of curious, like, what did change exactly? Because there is a little bit I'm missing psychologically. That
Yes. And that's a big part of what my problem was with Kirsten Dunst's character, is that there's like these little holes of information that I feel like we're not getting on the full development of her arc. And it's not her fault. She did amazing. I think it's just in the story.
There's changes in Kirsten Dunst, and there's changes in Kaylee Spinney too. The roles start to reverse, and one becomes hardened, and one becomes a little bit more. I would say she becomes a little bit more like Joel, becomes a little bit more of an adrenaline seeker herself.
I'm gonna say I found her quite annoying. She was so reckless.
Okay, well let's talk about that, because we get to DC.
Yeah.
That's when the president is in the White House. They're storming the castle, so to speak. And yeah, Kaylee Spinney she's getting in the fucking way the whole time. Like 7 times had to like pull her out and be like, get down.
Just completely irresponsible, completely reckless, completely like no regard for anyone's life, not even her own. And I just didn't like that.
Yeah. I mean, Kirsten Dunst, I don't feel like she did that. I don't think she put other people at a risk.
No.
You know?
She didn't put the whole mission at risk. She
Right.
wasn't in the way. Like, she followed the rules of like staying out of the way and just documenting, which I feel is why she was able to garner this reputation that she has.
Right.
Because she's so respected, because she's a respectable journalist.
Right.
But I feel like this little kid was not very respectable.
She was in the way a lot. But yeah, we basically storm the castle, and we're in the White House, which I found for me, I thought it was very chilling. Like, seeing the images of the White House inside. It feels weird because I've seen movies like, you know, Independence Day, where they blow up the White House, and I'm like, yeah, cool. But then for some reason in this movie, I felt it was very like, that is a sacred space, you know? I don't know. I really liked that part of the movie.
Maybe, do you think somebody could make the argument that that's in there because of the relatability to what happened in our country with the insurrection?
Some people will say not related. I would say completely related.
Okay. So you think the director knows what he's doing?
I think so.
Okay.
Honestly, I'll just get into this now. I think a lot of people say this movie is apolitical. I really don't think it's that apolitical. I think the film is making some Trump commentary. I do see some similarities. I mean, I couldn't get January 6th out of my brain. I know it wasn't anywhere near what we see in the film, but it's like the most extreme version of January the 6th. You know, also, you know, Trump was someone who wasn't accepting the election results of an election. This president in the film is on his 3rd term, so clearly he didn't also accept the election process. And there were fears that, you know, our army could become fractured in the sense where half our army could be fighting for a democracy and the other half would be fighting for Trump.
So you think it's inspired by real events?
I think this movie would not exist if Trump didn't exist. I don't think the thought would even pop in his head. But yeah, but they come across, I think it's her press secretary or someone who wants to make a deal with them and wants to negotiate the president's surrender. They don't even listen to her. They just shoot her.
It was ruthless.
Ruthless. And then we're about to get into the president's office. And then there's like a last minute gunfire between, I think, Secret Service and, you know, the people who are raiding them. What team would that be? The Russian front that's raiding them, or the Russian forces. And Kaylee Spinney is spinning out of control.
Yeah, she's doing her little reckless thing where she's just like lost in the moment, I guess.
She is about to get killed. And then Kirsten Dunst.
No. This is the part, also another part that like confuses me about Kirsten Dunst's character, is because I feel like her character wouldn't do that. And I know that through the movie we've been learning that she's, you know, turning over this new leaf because of her friend dying or whatever, but it's not that clear. I feel there's like a lot of holes still. And I feel like it's happened very quickly. She went from like a hardened, detached journalist to sacrificing her life for this reckless, irresponsible little girl that she doesn't even know. So it feels a little, I don't know. Am I being too harsh? Maybe I'm being
I would say the journey is better than having no journey at all, even if it is a little spotty and hop-skippy to get there.
It just upset me so much because I liked Kirsten Dunst's character a lot, and I thought she was a really cool character.
Would it have been corny if Kaylee Spinney died, Kirsten Dunst took a picture, and then she did the delete thing on that moment?
That I accept that.
You accept that? It's kind of saying something, though, in the sense that Kirsten Dunst has grown through this journey, and she's, for once, not just going to document. She's actually going to take action as a human. So there's a little bit of growth in her character.
And then she dies. The other cheesy moment that I didn't like was when like Joel's character was like screaming into the air. Like,
I think Joel's character was a little bit more inconsistent.
What was up with him screaming into the air that one?
It's like the scene in a movie when they scream on top of a cliff, and then, you know, one other character is like, "Come on, scream! It feels good," and then the person screams. It's like one of those cliche film things.
Look,
they had to silence them too. They never showed that with the audio on. They always silence it out and put music over it.
It's probably too cringe. Here's the thing: is that I really liked the movie. I liked the movie. It was really entertaining. I liked the story. It was honestly, I was entertained the whole time, but just there's a little bit of holes and inconsistent things in the story and the plot that made it a little hard for me to be like 100% in.
Okay, fair enough. And then there's just one other thing too. The scene ends where they're negotiating with the president. The president is begging for his life, and then at the very last moment, Joel says, "Wait, I need a quote." And he said, "Please don't let them kill me," or something like that.
Yeah.
And then they just kill him anyways. And the film ends with a photo developing where she basically takes a picture of Kaylee Spinney because she's being an asshole and gets in the way. She ends up living, so she gets to take the photo.
The photo that Kirsten Dunst wanted to take.
Yeah, that everyone wanted to get. And the photo is these smiling soldiers kind of over the dead president's bodies. And I personally, I think it was supposed to be chilling. I did find it chilling because it reminded me of like those Guantanamo Bay photos. I don't know if you remember, like there was those smiling soldiers who were torturing prisoners in Guantanamo Bay.
I feel like we've seen like so many images like that.
Yeah, it's chilling because technically the Western forces, I guess you can consider them the good guys who killed the bad old president who was refusing to leave office, but they did it in such brutal ways that it gave me the ick.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody is a good guy here, but of course someone ends up winning, so you assume that because they won, they're the good guys.
Yeah.
But who really is?
Right.
It's so dark and it's so uncomfortable.
And this is why I guess I ultimately appreciate the film, is because ultimately it evoked this side of me of like, oh, where's due process? What about our Constitution? What does our forefathers say? You know? And I was thinking about there's still part of me that still desires for a world where there's decorum, you know? And this film evoked that side of me of where I'm like, I really don't want to live in this
America.
I really don't want this to happen. I think that's just ultimately the point. Is it deep? Is it obvious? I mean, you can decide that, but it was real for me. Like, and I did evoke those emotions.
I was just mad that Kirsten Dunst died.
Those are our thoughts on Civil War, but you let us know in the comment section your thoughts on Civil War. What were some of your favorite parts? And also maybe like a deeper meaning that we completely missed. Other than that, thanks always for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more reviews.
And you have a video coming up.
Oh yeah, that's right. I have an early Oscar predictions video where I give my first Oscar predictions for the next year coming up.
I'm excited to see that. I don't know what's on your list.
But yeah, hit the subscribe button if you want to see that video or also more movie reviews. Follow me on Letterboxd and Twitter, links in the bio. Thanks always for watching.
Thank you.
And until next time,
I'll see you
at the movies.
Oscars.
Oscars. It's been so long, I forgot. I'll see you at the Oscars.
Guys, check them.